Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Weather or Not podcast, the podcast by weather enthusiasts for weather enthusiasts. I'm your host, Drake Foley, back again with my co-host, Colin Welty.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back. We took a little bit of a brief hiatus as schoolwork has gotten a little bit daunting, to say the least. And we still do have a lot going on as we close out the semester here. But we are glad to finally be returning to the Weather or Not podcast. We're going to be discussing a lot of our chases that we've been doing relatively recently in the past couple weeks. And then also maybe looking forward to the future, seeing what May holds for us, and maybe talking about a couple other things in there too.
Yeah, so I guess we can start off with, what's been going on this past month for us. So we've went on, I believe, 3 separate chases in the month of April. And
Exactly.
Today, we're recording this, I believe it's April 30th.
Yeah, so this is probably going to come out on May 1st, so happy May to everyone.
Yeah, happy May, It's a prime Oklahoma tornado season. So I guess we can start off. Our last podcast was right before the Squall Line MCS event. I believe it was early April. I can't remember exactly what day.
Yeah, it was April 9th, Friday, April 9th.
Friday, April 9th. So it was a pretty eventful day, to say the least. I guess I wasn't really there, so I guess I'll let you talk about what happened.
Yeah, so what kind of happened was, it was a Friday afternoon, and Fridays are good for us because, once we get out of our classes, we pretty much just we have free reign for the next couple of days to do what we wish. So most of us got done with our classes by about 2:30. So we loaded up our car and we headed out at about 3 o'clock, and we went to Ada, Oklahoma. And it was honestly a really successful chase. The drive over there was relatively easy. We stopped at this little gas station. It was called the Chickasha Travel Stop off of Main and 377. And we were just kind of chilling out there. We had a great view of the landscape from I think it was from the west that we were able to look out. And we got to see as some storms developed by about 5:30, what we were going to do. And we chased after a couple storms. Some of them had some hail cores. We were able to avoid that. Then we ended up going back to the Ada truck stop. And as we sit there, we're looking at the distance, and it looks like there's this massive, cloud and this massive storm system. And it also kind of looked like there was some lowering happening. So, we were just kind of watching it, trying to see what was happening. It ended up being a mixture of scud and some of the oscillations of the roll cloud that was moving in with a strong squall line. And we got so caught up in taking pictures and looking at it that it actually ended up getting to us way quicker than we thought. So we had to hunker down underneath this little gas station. We got, I think we were lucky enough to only get dime-sized hail, but some of the other places got up to 2 to 3 inch hail. It was an amazing squalling that came through. The winds were really, really fast. The cloud formations were absolutely outstanding, and it was just really, really cool. And so that was the first chase we did, and then the weather was a little bit dormant after that. April hasn't been the best month for severe weather. However, starting last week, I guess about a week ago today on Friday, we ended up being in a slight risk for parts of the Panhandle, for parts of western Oklahoma, and then also parts of West Texas. So we figured that would be a good day to chase. And Drake, you can talk about that chase.
So we kind of all got together and we were like, it's a Friday. Fridays are really good days for us. And we decided, we're going to go to this 5% tornado risk. So we decided to leave from Norman about 3 o'clock?
Yeah, we had to end up leaving later than we wanted to, because a lot of the chasers who ended up seeing some of the twin tornadoes and the supercell that produced 5 tornadoes near Lockett, Texas, they were all able to leave at noon or 1 at the latest, and we had to leave at 3, so we were way behind everyone else.
And by the time that the tornadoes were touching down and everything was getting really severe, it was around 5:30, and we were in Altus, Oklahoma. So we decided there was I believe a supercell that was north of Childress, Texas, that was about to cross the border. So we headed west towards El Dorado, Oklahoma, and we passed some really nice roll clouds. two outflow boundaries, and then we ended up with another squall line.
Yeah, and that had a bunch of hail on it. It was really crazy because we were going around one of these corners, and we had passed by Channel 9, one of their storm chasers, and whenever Channel 9 is stopped, that's kind of an indication maybe we should have stopped, but we kept going and we looked, and it looked like a massive hail core was right in front of us. Radar kind of indicated that. The clouds definitely indicated that, so we had to turn around and book it out of there, and ended up taking shelter underneath a Sonic in Altus, Oklahoma. But that was pretty crazy because, I mean, the hardest part was we had lost cell service in the middle of it, so we were really trying to scramble to figure out exactly what we were supposed to be doing. And it was also a little bit, that was probably our most frustrating chase because so many people were getting and these amazing footage of tornadoes next to rainbows, even more insane mammatus clouds than we saw, but we had just left a little bit too late to actually get there, and we went the cautious route. We probably, if we wanted to, could have core punched and made it right through that storm and gotten to where the hook was and gotten to where the tornadoes were coming down, but at least for our safety, we figured it'd be better to just stay north, not risk going to a storm from the north, and then try to see if we can intercept a new cell that formed. And unfortunately, no new cell really formed.
Yeah, that was the only cell that went warned. But we have chases, and not all chases are perfect. But I mean, we've gotten some very visually appealing storms.
Yeah.
And then this Wednesday, April 28th,
28th
was pretty eventful day for Texas, at least. We I guess we can start off. We left around 1:45, 2 o'clock, and we headed to Wichita Falls, Texas. Throughout the day, there wasn't really much action tornado-wise. Maybe more south towards Del Rio, but we couldn't make it there in time.
Del Rio was Del Rioing.
Yeah, but we made it to Wichita Falls and then decided, we wanted to just kind of wait there to see what would happen. Well, it looked like no storms were really forming at all out there, so we dropped south towards a storm that had been going for at least 2 to 3 hours west of Abilene, like southwest, and we decided that, okay, well, if we're going to catch any storm, we're going to have to go after this one. It looks like it's starting to get stronger. So we and the other car and members of the SUSCORE decided to dip southeast to try to catch up with this cell, and it led to some pretty amazing scenery. We saw a couple rainbows, everybody likes that, but it was intense, and then we got into Fort Worth.
Yeah.
And we'll let Colin talk about that.
Yeah, so we're heading on I-20. We're trying to catch up to this thing. We'd been trying to catch up to it for about an hour and a half because when we decided to chase the storm, we were on the northern part of it, and we ended up having to go around the backside and then catch up to it, and it was a fast-moving storm. But as soon as we got within vision of it, it had already been severe warned, but it became tornado warned. And so we are on, Interstate 20 we'd gone through Weatherford, we were entering the Saginaw area, and it's tornado warned, and we're like, oh my God, Tyler's got his weather radio on in the back, and we can hear them like, the National Weather Service has issued a tornado warning for the following counties, it's just like telling us that, hey, like we are in this tornado warning, and we're trying to position ourselves in a way, because that storm ended up having like 4-inch gorilla hail on it, that just like terrorized parts of I-35. But, we ended up looking to our left, because that would have been north, and we were able to see a wall cloud coming down. I don't think it's officially been confirmed or not if there was actually a tornado, but we were at least able to see the wall cloud, and we were inside that tornado warning, and we were in a really good intercept position for that one storm, with the exception of the fact that we were in a really heavy populated area as the sun was setting, so that was extremely scary. There were multiple times driving there where the rain just got so heavy that we had to pull off to the side to make sure, our cars wouldn't hydroplane and stuff like that. And but, once we got there, I mean, we were very, very happy to see it. It was really difficult to get footage of, and that I think is the tough part, because we weren't, there wasn't enough place for us to be able to, like, confidently stop and watch the storm without potentially putting ourselves in harm's way. But at the same time, it was also nighttime, so footage from a car is kind of difficult. But we were at least able to see it. We were able to keep ourselves out of harm's way. And then on our way back up, we had learned information about something that actually happened in Norman the one time that we ended up leaving. And that was a generational hailstorm. Preliminary reports are saying this might be the third costliest hailstorm in Oklahoma history. Hailstones were up to 3 inches throughout a lot of Newcastle, a lot of Southmore, North Norman, and we even got some stuff on campus.
Yeah, there was a couple hail cars that we saw with damage on campus, but I feel like those are probably people driving from outside. But the campus was spared, to say the least. I mean, we saw some trees down and some incredible wind and rain, which ended with a flash flood warning in Norman. But North Norman was heavily damaged. A lot of cars with no windshields, especially near the major retail stores.
Yeah, and dealerships.
And it was some very severe gorilla hail. There was people that were injured. I believe there was one injury reported of someone who had hail hit their head and they were bleeding from the head. I believe it was on the West Robinson and 9 maybe?
Yeah,
intersection.
It was it might be 35 or something.
35.
Like
and it was reported by the SPC that there was at least one injury reported.
Yeah, and it was a shame because it was baseball-sized hail there, and baseball-sized hail hitting you with 70-mile-an-hour winds, not very fun.
Yeah, I believe the preliminary estimates are over $500 million.
Yeah,
damage.
something like that, which is insane for Norman.
Yeah, and I know a lot of car dealerships have lost car windows. Stores lost their windows. It's pretty bad, to say the least. A lot of house damage, but it was like a small little, MCS event, I guess, or just a cell that was just really strong.
Yeah, I think it's just a really strong cell.
But it dropped a lot of hail, and it really intensified as soon as it got to Norman. And we were sitting at a Fort Worth gas station, and we were like, oh gosh, campus is about to be nailed.
Yeah, we were honestly in a really good position being where we were in Fort Worth because, it's a lot easier to evade those kind of things when you're on the road and when you're away from it than it would be, bunkering down in your house and stuff like that. And in that regard, especially when you know what you're doing. I'm not saying if hail's ever coming to drive away, but yeah, it was all really, really odd because not too much weather stuff has happened in Norman while we've been here, but anytime we seem to leave, that's when stuff gets crazy. And I also feel really, really bad for the people of North Norman, just because, we had just kind of stopped the cleanup from the historic October ice storm. To see continual tree damage from that, even 6 months from that, it has just been insane. But what's been making it more difficult is that we'll get a snowstorm and then the trees are weaker and all these trees have been weakened. So when you have a wind event and a hail event like we had on Friday, it results in the trees that are already weakened creating more damage than they might normally. So that was the most prominent thing that I saw, other than broken windows and stuff like that, was just the amount of tree branches and leaves that were littering the roads and littering the sidewalks. And so that we're probably going to have a lot of cleanup here in Norman for at least a few weeks, and hopefully by the next ice storm everything's fixed. But it's been a crazy month of April here, especially in the last week for weather. A lot of our friends have been getting some really, really good footage as well. I'm going to go ahead and plug them, but follow the Met Crew Chasers on Instagram and all the social media and stuff like that. They've been getting some really good images of some tornadoes and stuff like that. They've been a little bit more fortunate with their time. So I definitely check that kind of stuff out. A lot of great things happening with some of these student and amateur meteorologists from around here. But yeah, so it's been a very, very crazy month, to say the least.
Yeah, it's It's been a lot. I do remember there was a tornado about 30 miles away from campus, but probably more than 30. I don't know how far Paul's Valley is from here, but that was confirmed in EF1
Yeah.
tornado on a Tuesday night. I think Tuesday night being as severe as it was really kept Wednesday from being as severe as it was supposed to be.
Yeah, because, I mean, I think Tuesday, it was definitely one of those things where everything was extremely linear, but it persisted overnight and into the morning, and it persisted a lot more than a lot of people thought, a lot more than the models thought. And while most of those things that persisted weren't severe, the couple ones that were definitely a little bit worrying. Just because, the scariest thing being in the weather community is seeing nighttime tornadoes and nighttime severe weather events, because people already don't necessarily take things the most seriously. I mean, when we were in that tornado warning in Fort Worth, we knew what we were doing because we were there because of the storm, but there were so many people just continuing to drive and turning on 35 and going up the road and stuff like that. And there's signs everywhere and saying a tornado warning's in effect, and there's alerts on your phone saying a tornado warning's in effect, but the people of DFW were not treating it like it was actually a tornado warning there. And we're very, very fortunate that it wasn't really a tornado that ended up hitting the ground. It just ended up being a rotating wall cloud with some heavy hail. But, I imagine if that had been a tornado that dropped, I can't imagine how devastating that would have been, just because of how few people seem to be taking it seriously there. And what really, really disappointed me, and especially I know we have a lot of viewers who are in the DFW area, but please don't park under an overpass ever. We were on a service road, and we kept seeing people during heavy rain in that cell and stuff like that who just park underneath the overpasses, and that's dangerous for a multitude of reasons. One of them being the fact that you're causing a traffic jam. You are stacking a bunch of vehicles underneath an overpass, and that makes it difficult for cars to get through. It increases traffic, which is really bad during a weather event. And then secondly, it doesn't make you any less susceptible to hail and stuff like that, because especially when you get windiness with hail, the hail will just blow right through the overpass, and then your truck's going to get hit, and your car's going to get hit. And if there's a tornado coming, then it's going to act as a wind tunnel and probably, amplify the effects of the tornado. So there's just no reason to hide underneath an overpass. Find a gas station, find covered parking or something, or even just pull up to the side of the road, but don't just park underneath an overpass, because you could be putting yourself and other people in harm's way. And I saw that way too much when we were driving through Fort Worth.
Yeah, that definitely happened a lot, and it was kind of just, after years and years of people saying not to park under overpasses, people still do it, and it's just, sometimes I guess, maybe they're like, oh, well, this will keep me from getting, it's not. It's not going to keep you from getting hit by anything. It's really just dangerous to be there in general, and we are glad that nothing happened, at least in Fort Worth. There was some damage to mobile homes in Azle, I believe, which is northwest of Fort Worth.
Yeah, right above Saginaw.
And we couldn't exactly tell whether it was straight line wind damage or tornado damage, but it was wherever the rotation was. So that just is purely dependent on, whatever the National Weather Service says. But it was definitely an event to remember.
Yeah, well, also just for especially how many warnings were affecting heavily populated areas, because, the Fort Worth one and the Norman one were happening at relatively the same time, but earlier that day there was a massive storm headed towards San Antonio, and it looked on radar like it was going to be an extremely dangerous tornado, and I think they even had a PDS tornado warning for some of the area, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that. But I think thankfully there wasn't. It was like if it was a tornado, it wasn't a very severe one. But there was a lot of hail. I think some of the hailstorms I saw there were up to 6 inches in diameter, which might break the record for the largest hail in Texas ever. And then you had the ones by Del Rio. I think Fort Smith had a warning headed towards it at one point, which is really dangerous. So for whatever reason, the weather just seemed to be targeting the most populated areas yesterday. And it's a very, very good thing the weather wasn't as severe as it could have been.
Yeah. And, speaking of severe weather, the month of May is coming up.
Right.
And, May is synonymous with tornado events in Oklahoma, at least. I don't know about Texas. I know you guys get your most severe stuff in like November.
Yeah, it's been statistically weird as of late, but May would be the season to really get our worst stuff. What do you think about May 3rd, Drake?
Sorry. I've been looking at models, and I mean, I'm no trained meteorologist at all, but it looks like there's going to be a really strong cap, but a lot of like very high cape values in around the Fort Worth, Dallas area. Again, I've seen up to 5,000 in some models.
Me too.
Which there's a lot there, but it seems to be another dry line event, which has kind of been, what's going on the past couple weeks. So it looks like a lot of storms are going to initialize on whatever triple point decides to form. But since there's such a strong cap, but a lot of cape, there might be some very severe tornadoes, but in low precipitation areas. And May 3rd is, a synonymous day in Oklahoma history, the Bridge Creek Moore tornado. The SPC has already issued a 15% for areas in the Oklahoma City metro.
Yeah, this is the second day in a row, too, because when it was a day 5, it was 15% as well.
Yeah. And it's just looking like it's going to be a severe season to, finish off our college freshman year. But it's kind of interesting, especially, knowing what we know now about, like, weather and stuff. It's just been weird this year.
For sure.
A lot of things have kind of, like, a lot of the storms have been like, staying in Texas. There's not been a lot of action outside of, like right around the Panhandle and, like, southwest Oklahoma, at least in April. Now, March was a different story, especially for the Dixie Alley. But I've seen a lot of storms fire off in Texas, and we're kind of seeing, ones if that happens in Oklahoma. Well, we saw that one storm hit Norman, and it was very costly. And we're hoping not to get much severe weather, but I'd like to, be able to see it, but not hit anything popular.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just kind of how statistically severe weather has worked here in Oklahoma. The peak storm season is around May 11th, and May is prominently the most volatile for the storm season, and it's Oklahoma's best chance to see a tornado. So that's why, if you live in Oklahoma, you live in Texas, you even live in Kansas, May is your season to be watching. May is the month you need to be watching out for severe weather. And we're already starting to see it now where we're having multiple days in a row with severe weather chances and stuff like that. But especially given how similar this year has been to 2011, how similar this year has been to more active storm seasons, you definitely need to be paying attention because there is going to likely be an uptick in tornadic activity and severe weather in compared to recent years. And you think in Oklahoma about some of the most widespread outbreaks. May 3rd comes to mind. You look at late May with the multiple El Reno tornadoes. May 20th, 2013 with the other Moore tornado. There was, I forget what day it is in May. I think it was either May 9th or something like that, where the F5 hit Woodward or something like that. Might have been actually in April. But regardless, I think the 3 most widespread tornadic outbreaks in Oklahoma history have all occurred in the month of May, and they've all occurred in early May. So especially now that we're getting some strong signals for the upcoming couple weeks for storms, definitely be on the lookout. Definitely have your weather alerts turned on. Like if you're listening to this right now, pull up your phone, go to your settings in your phone, and make sure your weather alerts are on, and they're on no matter what your phone's on. So it doesn't matter if it's silent or not. If you can, invest in a weather radio. On Amazon, they've got weather radios for like $19, $29. Relatively cheap weather radios that will always stay on, and they will give you whatever warnings and whatever watches are happening for your area. It's very, very beneficial because in the middle of the night, sometimes it's hard to understand what's happening on your phone. But that weather radio will for sure work. Faux show.
Yeah, but other news in weather. I guess we've seen some stuff with chasers running stop signs, but I don't know if we should talk about
Well,
that. We might as well.
My thoughts on that are chasing is difficult. It really is, and especially when you're alone. This is why I never chase by myself. This is why I'm always chasing with SUSCORE, with the group and stuff like that. It's because I need to have my eyes on the road in these, especially in intense situations. And I think the best storm chasing teams are when you have one person on the road, one person's eyes are on the skies, one person's eyes are on radar, and one person's eyes are on the map. You get 4 people. Someone's always giving directions. Someone always is updating people on the radar, and someone's always updating people on what it looks like outside there. Because if you're by yourself, and if you're someone who's doing this for clout chasing and running your own YouTube channel and trying to be this independent creator, and then you're in charge of doing all those things, or you and another person are in charge of doing all those things, if you're trying to run away from a storm, you're not going to be paying attention to the road. I mean, I think I saw a study done that, a news article a few years ago, where the Weather Channel actually, their storm chasers struck and killed 3 people because they had run almost 80 stop signs. And I understand, if it's a tense situation and there's no one around you, it can be stressful, and it might seem stupid to stop for a stop sign, but, you can run 80 stop signs, but the chance of there being someone on one of those stop signs gets larger every time, and it would be really, really unlikely to come across 80 different stop signs on a chase and not have another car there at some point, and especially with the more digital age we're getting into, where so many more people are storm chasing, so many more people have access to resources to storm chase, you're not only going to have to worry about other civilians who are around and stuff like that, but you're going to have to worry about other storm chasers who might run a red light or might run a stop sign and stuff like that. And so I think it's something we try to pride ourselves that we're always going to be following the rules of the road whenever we're storm chasing, because that's what sets a good example. But you just always have to be paying attention, and even if you're going to make a mistake, because it's a high profile situation, it's a high risk situation, and it's a high intensity situation being a storm chaser. But even if you're going to make a mistake or something like that, you have to own up to it. Not to necessarily call out any specific situation here, but if you're guilty of running a stop sign, and you hit someone else, you can't just call it a freak accident. You can't just say it was, an unfortunate, no one could see it coming circumstance. You've got to admit, hey, I made a mistake. I ran a stop sign. That's on me. I feel really bad. I made sure the other person's okay and stuff like that, rather than trying to shift the blame to other people, and so there will always be, the risk for driving accidents when it comes to storm chasing, just because there's always a risk whenever you're driving. I mean, driving is not the safest thing in the world. You drive for 8 hours, there's a decent chance you're going to get across and come into a wreck. I mean, I think Texas, every single day over the past 3 or 4 years, has had a fatality on one of its roads. There's been some fatal car accident that's happened every single day in a row, even through the pandemic. And so it's just one of those things that you're always going to be at risk for the ability to get in an accident. But that's on the driver to understand that risk and be cautious when it comes to intersections and look both ways, and yes, there could be a severe thunderstorm raining down on you and approaching you, but that extra 2 seconds it's going to take you to stop and look both ways, or even if you don't stop and if you want to run the stop sign, at least look both ways and make sure you can actually do it. But actually doing that's not going to really put you in too much more risk than you're already in.
Stopping for 2 seconds isn't going to change anything.
Right, because, I mean, think about it. If you've got an EF3 tornado barreling down on you, it would suck if you got in a car accident and seriously injured yourself. Because then you got that EF3 tornado blaring down behind you. So even if you're slightly closer to it by stopping down for that stop sign, at least you eliminate that risk of being hit.
Yeah. Other than that, I know that we definitely are going to be back. I know these next couple weeks are going to be really tough. It's a shorter podcast, but it's not really. It's been kind of quiet.
It hasn't been quiet, but there's been a lot happening, and we had a lot to talk about necessarily, but we just haven't had too much time, and that's been the big thing. I mean, you take the most severe storm season and you mix it with the hardest work for us to be doing in school, then you get a recipe that just does not call for free time. And if we do have free time, we've usually been spending it doing assignments, so then we can have time to chase storms.
Yeah.
Because like that's what we're doing for May 3rd. I mean, I'm pretty much gonna go say it, but I think chase mode has been activated for May 3rd already. This is probably the best case scenario for us so far. We could be leaving, 1:30. We could be leaving the whole day, just because
we could be leaving at like
especially
11.
especially given it's dead week. We have a little bit more liberty with the assignments that our teachers have given us and stuff like that. And I'm doing my part to try to get all my work done for the next week, this weekend, so that we can take all the available time we have after attending all of our classes on Monday to chase. But what do you think about it? Drake, do you think it's going to go enhanced on the day one?
I really don't know. It's a very conditional storm, to say the least. I know a lot of people on weather Twitter have been complaining, stop giving out 5%. Well, I think this is a storm that, I believe this 15% seems more like a win thing. It usually shows, when SPC has been issuing a lot of things lately, 15% is usually wind or hail.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's going to be a huge tornado risk on the day. I think that there's going to be some discrete cells, but it's going to go linear really fast.
Yeah.
This could be a very severe squall line event, especially with the dry line. So we could see a pretty severe storm roll through the Oklahoma City metro. I don't want to say that, but there's definitely a chance. But I would love to see, my first tornado, well, technically second, but I'd like to see one before I leave campus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for May 3rd, I think when the new day one comes out, and you guys, when you listen to this podcast, can probably check this, but I think it's going to be a slight risk that goes from Tyler, Texas, up through the eastern part of Oklahoma. I don't think it'll include the Norman, the OKC metro area, but we'll see about that. And I think the rest of Oklahoma and a lot of Texas is going to be in a marginal with some of the regular thunderstorm over much of the deep south and over much of the rest of the area down here. It's a tough situation for sure because I know a lot of people have been complaining about the generosity of the 5% or maybe the lack of generosity in upgrading anything beyond a 5%, but it's been justified so far. Anytime there's been a 5%, there have been tornadoes that have formed right then and there, and usually it's only been one or two cells that have been able to produce tornadoes, and that's usually what you get with a 5%. It's not a case of like they're issuing a 5% and then we get 6 or 7 different warned cells all producing a bunch of tornadoes, and these outbreaks like we saw in Texas where you have 10 or 12 tornadoes in a small area. Instead, it's just been one or two storms are able to actually produce a tornado, and if they have been able to produce a tornado, it's either a short-lived, stronger one or a long-lived, smaller one. I think there was an EF3 actually in Texas.
I believe the Reed Timmer and Aaron J. Jack intercepted that.
Yeah, the one that they were able to get the sensor into. That was an EF3 for sure, but that was the only storm, or the only tornado of that entire day. I think until there was that like brief one that hit overnight
in Paul's Valley.
Yeah, Paul's Valley. But I mean, that was the only one in the 5%, and I think that was very justified. You had a 5% chance of seeing one. The one that was able to form was a stronger EF3, and they're still doing analysis on that. Who knows if it'll get updated or not? But that's it. They have been very justified in the 5% they've been giving out. I don't think they should give it 10% out unless there's multiple storms.
I think everybody just wants high risks, and I don't like that. I mean, we've had two so far this year, and they were very deadly. And, the first one was not deadly, mostly because of, James Spann's wonderful meteorological work. But the second one would just hit so many populated areas, there was not really much you could do. We don't want that here.
Yeah, for sure.
I am very fine with slight risks, but...
Sorry. Apologies to your ears.
Apologies to your guys' ears. But I think that the SPC has done a very great job this year, as they always do. I know that some people like to criticize them about their placement of high risks when nothing happens in the high risk tornado-wise, but out in the moderate it does. The risks just mean that your chance is higher. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get anything.
Right. Well, and that doesn't mean you are going to get anything either. It's just a risk. I mean, if you think about it, if you jump off of like a 3-story building, right, you have a high risk of injuring yourself. It doesn't mean that if you land perfectly, you're going to injure yourself. And not every time you jump off that building, you're going to be like damaged pretty badly. I mean, you can technically get out of that. But most of the time you jump off of that, you're probably going to be hurt. And there's a high risk of some really serious injuries occurring from that. I think the similar thing happens to weather. That's a weird analogy, I know. But when it comes to weather, I mean, there is a really, really high risk for storm development whenever they put down a high risk. And usually you get multiple tornadoes, and it verifies. But it's not going to be perfect because we can't predict the future. And that's all meteorology is trying to predict the future with weather. And the future just can't be predicted. So they give risks, they give probabilities and stuff like that, but you are not going to, it's not a guarantee. A high risk does not equal a high outcome.
Yeah. Any other things you'd like to talk about in weather that we can talk about, or is...
Not really. I mean, I guess we can just update for the future. I mean, we are going to be entering the summer, and our ability to do things over the summer is going to be a little bit different, just because we all live in different states.
Yeah.
So
the podcast will probably be going virtual.
Yeah, and then group chases will be a thing for August, and a thing for that. So June and July will not be very many group chases. But we're working on potentially getting a video out. I know we haven't posted a chase video in a while, but we had 3 relatively minor chases in April, and we're probably just going to combine that into one video just so you can see what we've been doing in April. And hopefully if May 3rd goes well and we're able to see something then we'll have another video for you then too. And then after that, we'll reconvene in August. We're definitely making some nice investments over the summer to expand our presence, working on some branding things, working on the ability to get maybe some CB radios, the ability to get some cool things for our cars and stuff like that. That will hopefully make us a little bit more prolific when it comes to storm chasing, and we'll see if we get anything over the next fall semester, and we're setting ourselves in a good position for next spring to be an even better year for SUSCORE.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have for today. I'm glad that we're back. Sorry for, the break. Being a college student is really difficult. But, I guess we'll see you guys on the flip side.
Yeah, SUSCORE out.